All right, it's 9 o'clock now, which means it is time for Live Zone Prime Time. I'm Syeda Abbas.
Happy Friday. This is Tony P here. We were on kind of a smart casual Friday here. I have to tell you, we get the little, my look's kind of like either a tech CEO or a suburban dad. You know, I was trying to figure out which one it might be.
Tech CEO, I like that
Not
vibe.
bad. You get, suburban dad with a lot of money is a tech CEO. You know?
Yeah, exactly. You know, rich dad energy. This is what we want to bring into the new year.
You know, it's about manifesting, right? There's the two things. There's the Mel Robbins theory of let them, and also there's manifest, put it out in the world, and then somehow it'll just pour and rain on me.
So about the let them theory,
yes.
I mean, do you really believe in that? You can't just let everybody do everything.
You see, it's funny. So she's, and I do really like her.
I really love Mel Robbins.
Shade, but she's been getting a lot of flack online, Syeda, because
like let them evict you.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's a little bit, it's kind of very surface level. Some people are saying it, and also potentially she may have taken inspiration from somebody else who had a similar theory.
That's what I felt like.
And didn't credit them properly. Again, I don't know every part of the story. I do like her.
Yes.
But she's also getting a lot of flack for doing protein powders now. She's selling some of that stuff. So I think that's just, the health and wellness space on social media is very, very tricky because you kind of don't know what's a grift and what isn't. And you really have to be careful what you put out there. But
we all do.
Listen, I think let them make sense for about 80% of life. Sometimes you're being a jerk and need to take criticism. And I think constructive feedback needs to still be implemented in people's lives.
Absolutely. I also really admire Jay Shetty. I listen to his podcast with his. I feel like more of their stuff is what I resonate with, and I love Mel Robbins. And I think everybody should read books on Stoicism too. Those are good too.
Yep, Ryan Holiday's got a great podcast on the Stoics.
Great, you know, staying in the present moment and staying in the present moment. We have a big deal tomorrow. Spanberger will be sworn in, making history, first woman for Virginia governor, and we're going to be all over that tomorrow. We have people coming in talking about her background, and again, we're still following up on the ICE shooting that happened, keeping our eyes out on protests that might erupt across the nation. But right now, we want to bring in someone who's going to entertain us all and keep it light here. Model and actress Gia Scova joining us for the very first time here on Primetime Live Zone on Fox Local. Now, you know, we were supposed to talk earlier when Bridget Bardot passed away, which was somebody who was a big inspiration for you. Is that right?
Hi. Yes, she is. She's definitely the icon, and I admire her beauty and lightness. So it's definitely like a person to talk about. And so first of all, I just wanted to say that how beautiful you are.
Which one of us?
I know, listen.
I mean, you too.
No,
sure.
I know my own limits, I promise you, okay? I'm working on my skincare routine to look as good as everybody else in this newsroom, but we're getting there.
So what are some fun projects that you have coming out?
Of course, number one is my Lucinda universe. It's a comic character in a comic book which is coming soon in New York. I hope it's going to be in January. That's like a big deal because will be my first comic book. Hard copy, physical, it's handed. It's going to be like a very, a classical comic book that's back days that people did. So that's what I did.
Now, when looking at doing something like this for the first time, engaging in a new creative endeavor, right? Because again, you've been done acting, modeling, and now you're taking this new path. How did you learn how to do a comic book series, for example? And what was that process to learn that, go forward with it, and create this whole new, storyline, basically?
Yeah, so for me, it's like a one world. And when I'm creating it, I cannot just separate things, right? So it's Lucinda, and it's more than that. I was in the Art Basel 2 years ago that was presented Lucinda, and this year, it's going to be already Lucinda Passport that the artist Sarah Fishbane working on that work. It's going to be like it's going to be like a big art that presented in Art Basel. So it's like a very different level, and it's art, and it's a video game, and it's a platform where Lucinda going to be present as just a separate code, like as a character. So it's like a lot of stuff. And what I can say, when you're creating something, you just have to believe what you do. You have to believe your vision. and bring to the world. So that's like my advice
Love
to
that.
anyone,
Yeah.
any art, in any art that it should be like this.
Absolutely. And I just want to talk about, not the way, obviously, I'm sure you've heard how stunning you are. Does that ever get in the way, you know, when you want to get those meaty roles for acting, right? Do you think people sometimes attach too much to the way somebody looks or how attractive they are, and they maybe can't see them as an actor because of how gorgeous you are?
Absolutely. When I directed my first movie, was exactly the same thing. So it's like, oh, she's just like a girl, and it'll not take me seriously basically until you perform. So I think when you have this like a weapon, beauty, you have to prove it that you talented or you professional in your area. And I mean, if you're professional, it's easy to prove.
I love that.
In your experience, again, you've had a really great long career in modeling and acting, and a lot of things have changed in these industries, right? So let me ask you this. How do you think social media and the digitalization of everything we're seeing creatively, AI, things of that nature, has impacted modeling and acting in your mind as you continue on in this new era?
I think it's not really, it's just a tool. And if people can use that tool as to help in order to create something, it's just a good thing to know how to use it. In my opinion, never human will be replaced by AI or anything that been made with like robot or whatever. Because when we telling a story, no matter like you guys telling a story, right? Art is also telling a story, movies, whatever. There is supposed to be a soul, and you connect to the soul, and this communication bridge is happening between audience and your soul.
I'm having so much fun talking to you and getting to know you, and producer Jim wants me to ask you, what are some inspirations you've had when it comes to writing for comics?
So when I did this, when I created the character of Lucinda, I really thought that's something. It needs to be it needs to be in the world that people will connect, because in my opinion, Lucinda, especially in the woman world, have in every girl, in every woman, because it's power, it's beauty, it's things must be done, and it's like represent of that kind of a superpower girl, which we already have it right in the comic world, but this is something new, fresh, and she's human. We start with the like no any superpower. She's just like a normal human. That's who we are, right? And after it goes like a more and more interesting, because the whole I created 12 chapters, so this was going to be the first chapter. And in story, when the story takes like more and more different direction, so she will definitely have her power, a different ability.
Speaking of those incredible superpowers, you have acted in so many different mediums, whether it be theater, right back in Moscow, you've done TV series, you've done movies, you've directed. And a lot of people will think, well, it's the same craft, you just act and be the character, right? But it's a lot different, I can imagine. So in your experience, how is it different preparing for a role in TV versus theater versus movies in terms of getting into character, your process, and just how you understand a given role?
Definitely, there is every technology and techniques coach, right, for specific like theaters or the movies exist, which is I highly recommend to use your favorite ones, because it's so many. But as my advice, I always try to understand the character and just be that character. So that's probably the key, not to play someone, but just to be. And that's the difference. It's like a key point.
I like
When you
that.
get that, you just like nailed it.
Exactly. You almost kind of embrace them. And when you think about the many audiences that you have presented and acted in front of, across the world, how does that impact your preparation? And are there certain ways that you go into a role or present yourself to work to those different audiences across different, basically, time zones and international?
Probably. I always try to connect with my audience, and that's with the movie, it's actually different, right? Rather than theater, because theater, you kind of feel your audience right there from the stage.
Yeah.
In a movie, you don't have that. For example, like right now, and you guys the same, right? You never see your audience. And for example, we have a younger audience, I guess, right? And the younger audience, like who you are watching right now in front of the other side of the screen, and I just want to connect with you, and I just wanted to tell something that, for example, if you're interested in my Lucinda, just come join and see what's going on with that. Or you have this a real connection through the screen, and when you are truly get that, I guess that's what's happening between the artist and the audience. This is a clean communication.
Right.
Absolutely. And obviously you've mentioned, and we said earlier, that you are greatly inspired by the late Brigitte Bardot, who recently passed away. And there is a character and a project coming up that might be inspired by Brigitte herself. What can we expect from that character?
So this project, I started this project 2 years ago in Paris with a very a great artist, and he already done it actually. He done 150 different art pieces with me, with my look, and 150 pieces with Brigitte Bardot. So I will be there in Paris this year for signing, and Brigitte Bardot is supposed to be there too. Of course, it's not happening, but I was just to being on that a level of her beauty. I was really honored, because in my opinion, Brigitte Bardot is one of the icon which was in the industry. She didn't do a lot of movies though, but her beauty is so powerful and inspiring. I mean, from fashion world, I can say it's so many big models who've done photo shoots just like her, like a copying basically her, right? And yeah, I think it's gonna be something beyond beauty, and to have this just lined up connection, I'm grateful for that.
And looking at your career, starting in Moscow, then here in the States and around the world, right, as we talked about earlier, what have you learned from that process, and how has it inspired you in your work, all these experiences that you have had going forward?
I'm still learning. That's what takes probably curiosity. It's never going lower. I love to study. I love to find something new, and I love to explore art, different artists and different areas, and that's what makes artists to kind of create. When you have this curiosity and you freshen your eyes, you can find something beautifully forget it, and forget stuff, right? And bringing this again in a new unit of time for the world.
I love that.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining us, and we really had a great time talking to you. Where can we find you on social media, or do you have your own website?
I have my own website. It's gskova.com. Also, my Instagram, gskovareal. So that's probably more Facebook, everything basically. And we always answering and update all of everything what we do. So that is probably the line. And yeah, so
And thank you for following me, by the way. I love your Instagram. Really beautiful pictures.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to take a quick break here. It was so much fun talking
Thank you,
to
Gia. That was awesome.
And then after the break, we're going to be back with Tony's Rundown.
Thank you so much. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Have a good night.
Bye.
Here.
Yay.
All right, welcome back on Live Zone Primetime. We are back with Tony's Rundown.
I love that interview, by the way. I mean, there were so many questions we could have kept asking, especially about the comic. I mean, doing that at such a great career she's had, from modeling to acting to theater, now comic writing. I mean, she'll be doing books, and you know, who knows what's next? Because again, what I loved at the end there is how she loves to explore.
Yeah.
How she loves to study new things. I get that feeling too. But again, the biggest thing, I've only been in this business for a couple of years doing broadcasting, and I just love the process of studying, of learning. So the fact that she talked about that and how she has gone from modeling and theater work in Moscow all across the world to do her own producing, directing, and now having a comic element like this is really, really just a really cool person we just talked to. And the inspiration behind it.
Jennifer Lopez.
Right, exactly. Putting that forward and really being that versatile and vulnerable about her process is really, really cool. So I really love that interview.
Yeah, she reminded me a lot of Jennifer Lopez, because Jennifer like acts, she dances, she's a performer,
a true
she's
creator,
a musician, and she's also a fashion designer. So you can do anything you set your mind to, is kind of like what she was telling us, and I love that about her.
Exactly. It's like I think it's right brain, left brain. I think if you're right brain, you're creative. And I think that creative juice never goes away, no matter where it is. I just think you're just naturally gifted to try those new things and just get the best you can out of yourself.
Absolutely.
So, again, I go on forever on that, but we'll go to back to our rundown here, Tony P's rundown, or whatever we're calling it these days. I'm trying to figure out a title.
Rundown.
We'll call it the rundown. All right, so we begin with a new presidential pardon that's raising eyebrows even inside Washington's Beltway. The New York Times reported today that President Trump granted clemency to Adriana Camberos, a convicted fraudster who has now benefited from presidential intervention more than once. Camberos was previously had her sentence commuted by President Trump in 2021, just before he left office, was later convicted in a separate fraud case, and has now been pardoned for that second fraud case. The reporting also says the decision is fueling renewed scrutiny of how and why these pardon decisions are being made. Of course, we covered former President Joe Biden's pardons back at the end of his term in 2025, including his family and his son, and the preemptive pardons to some of his officials. So the pardon power is one of the things that's very absolute with the president, but it is getting a lot of scrutiny for who it's protecting. And staying in the legal world, there's a major escalation in Minnesota today involving the Justice Department. CBS News is reporting federal prosecutors are investigating Democratic Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey for an alleged conspiracy to impede federal immigration agents. According to the report, subpoenas have already already been issued, and investigators are examining whether statements or actions by state and city officials amount to obstructing federal enforcement operations that expanded sharply in the Minneapolis area recently. The Department of Justice has not publicly detailed the scope, but the investigation is already intensifying the political clash between the Trump administration and Minnesota leadership, especially one day after Governor Walz issued a call for peace between Minnesota and the White House. Not a foreign policy where President Trump's rhetoric on Greenland is once again causing international shockwaves. There's a report out tonight that a bipartisan congressional delegation traveled to Denmark and Greenland to try to cool tensions after President Trump's renewed threats and suggested military force. That force could remain on the table as he pushes to bring Greenland under U.S. control. Lawmakers from both parties emphasized Greenland's right to self-determination and said Congress is not aligned with the idea of taking the territory. At the same time, President Trump has also floated the idea today of using tariffs as leverage, arguing Greenland is critical to U.S. national security. Back here at home, we are also following the latest Trump administration developments through the New York Times and other updates to talk about legal fights, things of that nature, immigration enforcement, and other items as well. Now to money and housing, because that's becoming a major, major shift. There's an analysis coming out tonight through the Wall Street Journal and others that a generational wealth transfer is looming upon us, with $4.6 trillion in residential real estate expected to change hands to Gen X and millennial populations in the next 10 years. The story focuses on what those means are for heirs, investors, and the housing supply, with some analysts expecting a major portfolio reshuffling, more property sales, and bigger opportunities for younger buyers and commercial operators if they're positioned to step in. So we may have some relief for housing. In the world of tech, a major change could be coming to the ChatGPT experience. Word is reporting that OpenAI is preparing to test advertisements inside ChatGPT for some U.S. users, specifically in the free and low-cost tiers. OpenAI says the ads will be clearly separated from the assistant's response, and the company says it will not share user data with advertisers or allow ads to influence answers. The reporting highlights the AI infrastructure costs remain enormous, pushing companies to expand revenue beyond subscriptions. I wonder how they're going to do those ads, Syed. I mean,
so what's the low cost?
Without suggesting it, I mean, that's going to be interesting. I mean, they're not going to suggest for shopping or for medical stuff, hey, try this store. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, right now, even the suggestions could be ads themselves. So we'll see.
We did this on Do You Like It or Not, too. People
Right.
are excited about the ads, by the way.
Right. Now, to the world of ads, we're going to keep that going because this headline is pretty fun. And nostalgia is basically on its way back, folks. Dos Equis is bringing back the most interesting man in the world campaign, including the original actor Jonathan Goldsmith, as the brand tries to reignite sales and capitalize on cross-generational recognition. The Wall Street Journal reports the company sees this as part of a bigger relaunch and long-term effort to grow. And, you know, to grow the share, because the market has been slowing down for Dos Equis, and the beer market, as you know, through craft breweries and things of that nature, have made the business a lot more fragmented. Now in the world of entertainment, starting with a deeply disturbing case update with the Rob Reiner situation. Extra reports that Nick Reiner has been placed under a court-ordered mental health conservatorship years before he was charged in the murders of his parents, director Rob Reiner and Michelle Singer Reiner. The report says the conservatorship was tied to concerns about his mental health and ability to manage parts of his life independently. And those court records are now being re-examined as the case unfolds. So that conservatorship happened before the case involving the murder of his parents. And in a rare personal comment from a sports legend, one of my favorites, Tom Brady, is opening up about his recent divorce. Brady said the period around his final NFL season was very difficult, acknowledging the emotional strain of navigating the end of his marriage to Gisele Bündchen, while also trying to stay fully committed to the Buccaneers and his team responsibilities. It's one of the most direct reflections Brady has shared publicly about this chapter of his life. Also making headlines tonight, Pamela Anderson is still talking about the fallout from the documentary or docu-series Pam and Tommy. TMZ reports Anderson says she wants an apology from Seth Rogen for his involvement with the Hulu series, and she described feeling very uncomfortable being seated near him at the Golden Globes this past weekend. Anderson has long said the show reopened an extremely painful period in her life and was made without her consent. And finally tonight, a good news story out of Virginia. After 70 years of marriage, a couple who originally eloped finally had the full wedding ceremony they never got to have.
Aww.
Friends and family helped put together the celebration, turning a lifelong dream into a real moment decades later. And I have to say, I watched the Pam Anderson interview about Seth Rogen. And this is, I think, a very interesting case. We're seeing it with the JFK series that's coming out, where JFK Jr., where the Kennedy family is very upset they weren't consulted about it. It reopens some old wounds. And I can definitely see Pamela Anderson's point there. I mean, the Pam and Tommy series was very well done. It was compelling. It was entertaining. But this is her life, and she's an incredible actress. She's been building a great career post all of that. And again, she's had an incredible span in Hollywood and beyond. But I mean, I think sometimes the exploitation of these celebrities goes very, very far, because especially when it's not made with their consent, with even their thoughts on the page to tell her side of it, because it was really made to be an attention grabber as opposed to being a real story about a very tough time for, you know, Tommy Lee and for Pamela Anderson.
Well, she had a documentary come out, I think a year or 2.5 years ago that I watched, and it was Pamela Anderson was sharing about that era in her life, and it was very traumatic for her.
Right.
And, you know, I think that was a really big relationship for her, where her and Tommy were on again, off again. It was a little abusive, and people wear those costumes. Well, this is one more thing I want to add here. Megan Fox and her boyfriend at the time dressed up as Pam and Tom, and these are not things to glorify, because at the end of the day, like, it was an abusive relationship. Right. And for her, like, she, and in her documentary, Pamela said that, you know, a lot of people, when her house was raided and somebody stole, obviously the tape I'm talking about, that wasn't something that she had planned, which is, she was saying how, like, after that there was a trend of people, you know, releasing tapes, you know, celebrities, that Paris Hilton had one, obviously we all know about Kim Kardashian's, and she didn't make any money off of that situation.
And it was her personal thing.
It was her personal thing, and her sons were part of the documentary, and, you know, I watched it, and it honestly made me so emotional, because she said, like, you know, Tommy is going to be the only love of her life. She hasn't felt like that for a really long time, and it really showed a different side to her. And I think when you take somebody's trauma and just try to make money off of it, if that's what you're trying to, I don't know, I just don't respect it. I think they should have at least given her a conversation, a phone call, something, some respect. So I completely get it. I wouldn't want to sit next to him either.
Or tell the real story. Talk about the pain and tell it in a truthful way, as opposed to always trying to grab the viewer by, oh, the tape, because that was involuntary in her case, and that's a private part of her life. And you know what, though? I love that she is just moving forward. She had a great career with the new Naked Gun movie that came out over the summer with Liam Neeson. She played a great role. I know her and Liam Neeson had a little fling for a while. She talked about that openly on this podcast.
Oh, that was a really thing.
Yeah, they had like kind of a short-term relationship, and they're very, very close. And she was wonderful in that movie. So,
and I love that she was going makeup-free, too, for a little bit there. And I was like, this is amazing, man.
Well, she's reclaiming her story.
And I do want to add this about Pamela Anderson. And in the 90s, people were so mean to her in general. People were mean to so many women that were fine with their sexuality. And she was just the first of her kind, like somebody who would get, like, you know, people would tear her apart for her outfits, or like, she's too sexy. And even it was so accepted for women to just, you know, hate on her at that time. And she was always such a sweetheart. She was so nice in every interview that I watched. She was never bitter or vindictive. You know, she was ahead of her time, where, you know, she was beautiful, sexy. She was in Baywatch, and people were mean to her just because she was a beautiful person and a beautiful woman. And she was still so kind. So I think, like, I always remember her and her amazing bun that people tried to recreate.
From Baywatch, again, also being exploited through the Borat series. I think that was one of the series that she was exploited in. Again, like, when you have to go through all of that constantly, that can be so much emotionally, spiritually across the board. She is an incredible inspiration to so many people.
Apparently, she's not getting residuals from Baywatch, too. And it's her sons brought that up in that documentary.
That's ridiculous.
Like, she is Baywatch.
She is. Her and David Hasselhoff. That's the whole series.
Yeah.
That was actually funny. Speaking of Baywatch, there is I know our parent company Fox put out a memo online, or a post on social media, where they actually have open casting calls for the new season of Baywatch. That's coming up soon, and Fox put it on I think it was the Fox Entertainment Instagram page, and I reposted that because I said, you know what, I may give that a try myself, because I did love Baywatch. I watched all the episodes from the 90s and that whole series. Again, Pamela Anderson, she made that show.
Absolutely. About Tom Brady, I respect him as an athlete. As a person, you really think he's a good guy.
I mean, here's the thing about Brady. I think he's doing a really good job for Fox Sports, also our parent company, doing really good work in the booth there. He did a great segment the other day where he was throwing, he kind of practiced throwing the football. He was showing, like, how to throw the ball in wind and things of that nature, because he's so technical, right? And he's got that championship pedigree. He's the GOAT, 7 rings. I think it's a good angle for viewers to get. Now, here's the thing.
We make mistakes.
Yes, we all do. I think that whole situation, I'm not going to comment on someone's marriage or what happened there, but I think in a lot of ways he still wanted to play. Gisele Bündchen was like, hey, I have supported you for a lot of years. I told you to retire at a certain point. I gave you an extra 3-4 years to go win with a new team, and now you're not going to commit 100%. I'm out. And I totally get that from both their perspectives. He still wanted to play. She didn't want to put up with that anymore. It's tough being in that life, especially, being a partner. And Gisele Bündchen has her own business, has modeling and her beauty line and all of her media. Like she was, and still is, much wealthier than he is. So these two, again, they're, both on their own tracks. Again, Gisele Bündchen just had a child, so things are going well there. And Tom Brady's in the news with the Alex Earl relationship potentially, and in St. Bart's, who knows? But overall, I do like seeing Brady open up more because he is known for not opening up a ton. He went on a couple Barstool podcasts recently. He's been, taking more questions than he has in the past. And this is his period of life. He's being a dad. He's posting about being a father and living that life. Let him be. I mean, I think he's doing very well. But you know what? Personal football, I'd love to meet him someday, so maybe I'll find out what he's really like in person.
Absolutely. Let us know.
Exactly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here. We'll be right back on the Live Zone Primetime. All right, welcome back. President Donald Trump is taking part in a $50 billion program aimed at making hospitals better in rural America. Let's take a listen.
But I want to hear now, if I could, from Dr. Oz, and then we're going to have Dan Sullivan say a few words, and Rob and Mike, and Governor, you're going to say a few words, and we appreciate you being here very much. You're doing a fantastic job. I just want to leave by saying that this is the biggest thing to ever happen to healthcare in our country. It will not be covered that way by the fake news, and that's a sad thing. It will probably not be voted positively by the Democrats, and that's a sad thing. They all know how good it is. I think we can make health care into a Republican issue because the Republicans are going to be close to unanimous on this. It should be unanimous. Maybe we will be unanimous, but it'll be close. But we have a small majority. We probably need a little bit of help from the Democrats. So whatever we can do, we're going to do it. It's the biggest thing to happen to health care, maybe from the beginning. So Oz, would you take it away, please? Thank you very much.
Mr. President. Mr. President, thank you for standing up for American health care. And I just want to underline this fundamentally important issue. We need Congress to help craft the Great America Health Care Plan. And the Great Health Care Plan will work. It's a brilliantly conceived framework. and as it comes to the American people, they understand that they'll want it, and it should represent the analogous situation, similar to what you did so brilliantly last spring with the working families tax cut legislation that the president mentioned, has created the Rural Health Transformation Fund, which is why we're here today. I want to put a little bit of texture around why this is such an important issue, because the Rural Health Transformation Fund is the largest investment ever in American history in our rural communities. Yeah. 50% increase in the amount of money that Medicaid, which Secretary Kennedy and I regulate, into our rural communities, $50 billion. You can do the math, it's $1 billion per state, and that's an important factor because it got them competing. There are 60 million rural Americans, and these folks do not have access to the same care that's available in urban and suburban America. Their life expectancy, if they're in a vulnerable situation, is 9 years shorter, because your zip code actually is your destiny. It determines how long you're going to live, and we can make a dent in this because the high rates of chronic disease and other ailments that plague our rural areas are often driven because they don't have access to care. That's going to change because of the Sentinel legislation. And again, it's similar teams, the same leadership, same president, same Congress that passed the Working Families Tax Cut legislation, which is incredibly popular around the country and will make the great health care plan successful as well. From the day the legislation was signed to create this wonderful fund, this transformational fund, the team at CMS, which is under Secretary Kennedy, began working. And they're here today. Steph Carlton, outstanding Chief of Staff, Alina Chekai, and Emily Chan. That day started working. It was July the 4th, by the way, on the specific vision for the program. How do you actually get the money out the door in 6 months? The president was insistent. He did not want the money in Washington. So we began working closely to make sure that we'd use the money not as a Band-Aid, but to empower those closest to the challenges that rural patients face. And who are those people? The 50 people who know rural health care the best? The governors. They wanted the money out of Washington into the governor's hands, and that was done in a remarkable way. The governors thought big. We have one here from Nebraska who was actually the first to start working on community engagement, which is part of that legislation as well. But we have to right-size health care in rural America, and that's an important phrase. All 50 states submitted amazing ideas to transform rural health care in ways that should have been done decades ago. The CMS team awarded each team their portion of the $50 billion investment precisely with the same precision that we took Venezuela leadership, a convicted individual, and with Iran as well, the same precision on time before the end of the year, and got it out of Washington into the states. Now I want to take a step back and do a little thought experiment, Mr. President, if you want to do this. If you, and God forbid this happened, had turned your head the other way in Butler, Pennsylvania, it wouldn't have been an ear injury. Now, I've been to Butler. I'm from Pennsylvania. Butler General Hospital is a good hospital. They don't have neurosurgery there. If you have an injury to the head, you have a golden hour to get cared for. You were taken to Butler General Hospital. Because the injury, thankfully, was not as lethal as it was designed to be, it wasn't a problem. But if you'd had a head injury, you could have had your life saved. But without a neurosurgeon, and there is no neurosurgeon at Butler General Hospital, unfortunately, you wouldn't have an option because Pittsburgh is a far, far ride away. That's the closest metropolitan area where there are lots of neurosurgeons. But with this bill, this legislation rather, this funding of $50 billion, Pennsylvania got its share. And they're going to be able to build telemedicine hookups, even telerobotic surgery, that would allow an injured individual in a car accident or any other reason that is a head injury in Butler General and rural hospitals across the country to be able to access the best care our nation has to offer so rural America will not suffer. That's the promise of what this money offers to our nation. It's not just paying the bills, it's not just picking up the pieces, it's actually transforming using technology we have widely available in urban America, the way we save lives in rural America. Each state competed aggressively because for $1 billion, Mr. President, you'll fight pretty hard. And they gave us brilliant ideas that they're talking with each other about. So we're actually creating teams that now across state lines will connect because they're all Americans and they base their advances on several pillars. Secretary Kennedy can talk about MAHA because there's MAHA elements to this as well, but very precisely sustainable access. We asked states, how can we bring top care closer, like in the thought experiment I gave you for Butler General. In Pennsylvania and North Carolina, there are regional spoke models, and hub and spoke means you've got a big hospital in the city and they adopt or work closely with some rural hospitals to solve the challenges of fragmented care. And that actually works. You share administrative back office work, you group purchase your stuff, you save money, you exchange medical records. Alabama has no OBGYNs in many of their counties. So they're doing something pretty cool. They're actually having robots do ultrasounds on these pregnant moms. So we can actually get those images back to the big center. So we know if the child has a problem, and we know if that mother's at risk. We have one of the highest maternal mortality rates in the world, in the country with the best medicine in the world. It's often stated, people ask, does healthcare stink in America? Well, they don't like it. Would you leave America to get healthcare elsewhere? Nobody leaves. We have the best healthcare if you can get to it. We don't want rural America left behind anymore. As an aside, by the way, we've talked about the most favored nation drug pricing. One of the first companies and areas we used most favored nation drug pricing is fertility drugs. That's why we're going to have so many Trump babies, because we've dropped dramatically the most expensive part of the fertility space. And so America no longer will pay so many times more, in that case it was 10 times more, for the same fertility drugs that they're available for moms who want to get pregnant in Europe. I want to thank Terry, who's here as a nurse practitioner, Andrew, who's a doctor, West Virginia, New Mexico. They're representatives of the workforce in rural America. But there are only 2 of them here representative because we don't have enough people working in rural America. It's a big challenge. So Delaware is creating its own medical school, their first ever medical school in a rural part of the state. So that can get more local talent that will stay local in those parts of Delaware. Michigan is launching the High School to Healthcare Pipeline Grant Program. They want to take kids out of high school in Michigan, local rural communities, and get them into the system, get them trained as nurses, because they'll stay home because they're from those communities, and they'll save lives for decades there. These are the types of programs that can get our rural communities and economies up to high gear and keep it that way long after this 5-year funding is done. And finally, tech innovation. Rural communities would benefit the most from high-tech advances, like we just discussed, as possibly if there was a head trauma case. Many states want to partner with our CMS data interoperability network. It was created by Amy Gleason, who spearheaded so much of the technology transformation in our government. It's going to support the president's pledge to provide transparency that he mentioned as part of the great health care plan. And Congress can ensure these are all available for decades to come if we can get this legislation through. As in the tech innovation forefront, just to give you a couple examples, Texas and Hawaii are making targeted investments in statewide telehealth, so everybody has telehealth. The best doctors for the best knowledge available where you are. We'll meet you where you are. If you're a vet and depressed and you're thinking of taking your life, we'll be there. Just let us know you're in trouble and we'll help. Alaska wants to deploy, and I'm going to hand it to Senator Sullivan in a second, wants to deploy unmanned pharmaceutical distribution kiosks and drones that will deliver medications, because in the North Slope of Alaska, you can't get there this time of year. So these technologies, they exist. Why are we using them in Midtown Manhattan? We should use them in rural Alaska. This administration is committed to collaborating with all 50 states, all 50, red and blue, all 50 states, to carry out bold plans to tackle the challenges that local communities face. We're not pouring funds blindly, however, into a broken system. We're going to carefully, precisely, as the president said, target this investment. With healthcare fund running rampant, and I was in Minnesota this week, Mr. President, it's worse than we've heard, but Minnesota, pardon the pun, is just the tip of the iceberg. California is the varsity team when it comes to fraud, waste, and abuse. We're not going to let that happen. We want transparency for this $50 billion investment. We owe it to Capitol Hill, we owe it to this president, and we want accountability to be a top priority. For that reason, we've created an Office of Rural Health Transformation at CMS for long-term oversight. The office, led by Alina Czech-Guide. Alina, again, was one of the people who helped create this program in the forefront, will guide, she was in the first administration, Mr. President. She's going to guide states in implementing their rural health transformation plans, coordinate all the federal and state partnerships, making sure there's appropriate oversight. In addition, every single state is going to have a dedicated project officer. We will be there with you. We're going to help you. Please engage us. You've got lots of lives at risk. It's a true state-federal partnership, unbelievable, extraordinary milestone for healthcare. Your zip code will no longer dictate whether you have excellent healthcare. Your zip code will no longer be your destiny. It's not going to dictate your life expectancy. Mr. President, I cannot thank you enough for the leadership that it took to get this $50 billion investment in rural health care. They don't make a lot of noise. They just want to get the job done. You stood up for them in Congress. God bless you for making this possible. Please do it again. Please do it again for the great health care plan. Let me hand it to Dan Sullivan, who's a spectacular member of the Senate, and obviously Alaska, they're pretty rural.
Thank you, Dr. Oz. And
all right, that was Dr. Oz speaking about healthcare in rural America. He mentioned Pennsylvania being one of the places where there needs to be more in place when it comes to what people can benefit from when they go to the hospital if it's a dire situation. And we saw President Donald Trump there as well, also talking about technology in those areas. For instance, places like Pennsylvania with Wi-Fi, and there just needs to be more done there. So it's good to hear all of that.
Really interesting, too, was some of the techniques they may want to use with this $50 billion fund. Again, they said the average would be about $1 billion per state for rural hospitals and rural medication transfer, things of that nature, to get medication and services to communities faster. They mentioned things like medical kiosks, potentially, since it's hard to build hospitals quickly.
Telehealth.
And then all telehealth, more Wi-Fi options with broadband. And they talked about bringing drones in some of the more sparse areas of these rural counties to deliver goods or food or medication to patients that need things on a more consistent basis. For example, if you're older or you had a chronic injury, you had surgery, you need medication and resources a lot faster on a consistent basis. What I also found interesting, Syeda, was this. So the Senate, of course, is up for re-election in 2026 this year for the midterms.
Yeah.
And Dan Sullivan is one of the more vulnerable senators for Republicans this year on the map, especially now that Mary Petola, a former representative in Alaska, a Democrat who won statewide as the only representative for the state, as in the House 3 times. She lost, though, in 2024, and she's running for that seat that Dan Sullivan's holding. It's going to be a very tight general election, a major potential pickup for Democrats, and for Republicans, they are on the defense with that particular race, because it shows that Mary Petola, when she's in the race, she's pretty close to Dan Sullivan, tied or down 2, or some polls have her up by 1 or 2 points. So I see the strategy potentially being that Dan Sullivan could be the Senate lead on a health care bill like this to deliver stuff for Alaska and other rural states that could help him in his re-election bid coming up this year. So you can see some of the politics being played with the policy as well.
Politics are always in the room.
It is.
And I think when we were taking a look at President Donald Trump, he seemed a little bit checked out there too.
I mean, look, I mean, when you're in a meeting like that, there's a lot of dense stuff going on. And
Oh, yeah, I'm
when
sure.
you're president, you have a lot of things to deal with in terms of different briefings you get every day, national security wise, or you're dealing with any host of foreign policy issues with Greenland. You have things going on, of course, in Iran. You have the major uprisings and the very brave protests there.
Absolutely.
You have Ukraine. You have
The economy.
the economy. You have
Iran.
exactly. You have so many things at play here. I mean, he did look a little bit checked out, but again, I think it's a very dense situation. That's why, again, you have cabinet secretaries. That's why you have Dr. Oz was mentioning, hey, here's who we're putting in charge of these different offices for accountability and rural hospital transformation. That's why you have those people around you where, your job as the executive is to basically take some of the main points, have your vision, and then you have your team execute those things. And again, as president, he has been caught sleeping in some cabinet meetings and things of that nature. We've seen President Biden do that at some times as well. So again, presidents can get tired. And,
Yeah, definitely not a criticism from my
no,
side.
no, totally.
Yeah, I haven't seen all presidents do that, but it's a step in the right direction, though, this topic.
Is. No,
because
yeah.
sometimes we tend to forget about those smaller rural towns where they might not have things that we are taking here for granted,
Right, 100%. And you had a great point about, talking about Pennsylvania and how it is a huge state. There's only certain, city centers. You have Pittsburgh, you have Erie County, you have Philadelphia and the Philly suburbs. You live in the middle of that state, and I've driven across that state to go to Pittsburgh.
It
is very sparse, and you need those resources in there. Now, the biggest question, Slade, is going to be this. What does all this mean for the future of Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act? Because that's still a law of the land. Supreme Court upheld it 10 years ago. Now, Congress has tried to repeal it in 2 Trump administrations. It has not happened yet. There still really isn't a healthcare exchange program from the administration. It's a lot of state-based funding, for example. This is the Rural Transformation Project. You're also seeing the president talk about direct payments to citizens potentially for health insurance premiums as opposed to going through the Obamacare exchanges. So with all this happening, it's kind of a tight window because the midterms are in November 2026. Primaries are in the spring. Fundraising season happens throughout the year and in the summer. Congress goes home basically in July and August. So you have 8 months to figure out a healthcare situation and a plan. I don't know that's going to get done. And because I think it's one of the things that have been, lagging behind for the president as well as I think the Congress is they have not enacted a lot of legislation in these last year and a half or so. They haven't. I mean, they have had some of the least performing stats, or I would say, again, if you look at things like sports, they haven't put a lot of points on the board in terms of legislation. It's the big, beautiful bill and a lot of executive orders and foreign policy. That's it. They have not really done a lot of things with affordability or housing. They have concepts now from the administration, but there's definitely a need for speed now, to use the old video game reference, need for speed, because you have literally 7-8 months to get anything else done, because Congress does have the power of reconciliation. They can do one budget reconciliation a year, which is kind of a major bill. President Biden did this with the COVID bill that he did, the American Rescue Plan, and then did some stuff with the infrastructure bill. That was also partial reconciliation. So there's a lot of stuff that can be done, but this timeline needs to get a lot faster for the president if he wants to get these transformational things done.
Absolutely. Affordability is a big one there. A lot of people, thinking about those health insurance premiums as well. Affordability was a big theme in Abigail Spanberger's election run, and that was something that really brought her that big W. Right now, currently, we are seeing live footage coming out. I believe it is from Minneapolis, Minnesota. Protests are ongoing, chaos there, still ongoing. When I was watching the shot just a little bit ago, I would say like a minute ago, I'm seeing it right now. Protesters are out there, tear gas being deployed by ICE agents that are on the scene right now, and we're seeing this is going on when the weather is frigid out there in Minneapolis.
It's snowing
it is
there too.
not stopping the folks to step out there with their signs and gather around for the rally, make their voices heard. And this is how much the weather is not, creating an obstacle for them, because they are passionate about, making their voices heard. And ICE agents are on the scene. We're seeing that there as well. We saw tear gas there. And again, folks, protests are going to be popping up even this weekend. We're going to be all over that, including our coverage on Abigail Spanberger being sworn in as the first female governor of Virginia. And again, you're taking a live look at this protest in Minnesota that we have up for you right now. We're seeing folks there rallying together. And this is an ongoing thing. It seems to be that the relationship between ICE agents and folks there in Minnesota is not it's not going well.
It's not at all, and it looks like it might be outside an ICE facility or a headquarters or some type of setup here in Minneapolis. It doesn't look as chaotic as the previous protests after the second shooting of the immigrant that was shot in the leg, and that situation that happened out. I think it was the 600 block of 24th Street in North Minneapolis. That was a major conundrum. You had tear gas, flashbangs. There were reports of protesters throwing fireworks. Mayor Fry and Governor Walz called for calm. The chief of police there, Brian O'Hara, said, please go home that night after the protests in Minneapolis, North Minneapolis. And tonight it looks a little bit calmer, but still very high on tension, because this is still a very, very active case. The investigation from the FBI is still very unclear. There's a lot of disputes, not only for the case involving Renee Nicole Good, but also the second shooting involving the Venezuelan national that was shot in the leg. His representatives, their representatives, are very much disputing the federal government's timeline or array of events that they put out there to the public. So this is still a very ongoing situation. We talked about it in my rundown that there is investigations being held right now of Governor Walz and Mayor Fry. Subpoenas have been issued by the Department of Justice for potential impeding of federal operations.
Yeah.
Based on, and some of the cases, or some of the subpoenas are looking at their words and their actions and how that influenced how the local police responded to a lot of these situations. Also, if local police and the courts are doing anything to impede the operations being done in Minneapolis. Because again, you have to remember, this was a surge of officials recently. About 2,000 was the initial surge into Minneapolis because of renewed concern and, I would say, attention on the child care and medical fraud situation that happened throughout 2022 and into 2024, 2025. And that was all sort of brought to light again by a YouTube influencer, actually, Nick Shirley, who did an investigation through YouTube. And again, he's an independent journalist. There was some of the claims were not verified by media and national journalists as well. They were not verified. So that situation ignited more attention on this issue, got millions and millions of views across YouTube and online. And that was potentially one of the catalysts to bring ICE into this area to crack down on the fraud, basically. But this has led to a lot of agitation from the community. As we talked about throughout the last week, there's been back and forth between protesters and ICE. There's been physical altercations. ICE has taken citizens into custody. They've been very brutal and aggressive with individuals that weren't even doing anything that was obstructing. They were in their car trying to get to a doctor's appointment, or they were just working at Target. And then you do have fireworks being thrown by protesters out of anger. So there's a lot of things being at play here, Syeda, and I don't know how this gets remedied, because there's no sign of ICE being pulled out or the troop numbers going down. They're going to be there. They've surged even more towards 3,000 troops there now with 600 Minneapolis police officers. How do you do that? And how do you balance out the state obligation for police and for state patrol versus the federal law? How do you do that? And that's one thing that Mayor Frey has talked about across podcasts and TV, where he has said it'd be hard for us to arrest federal officials there because they have more guns than we do and they have more manpower. So there's a lot of, there's so many just things that play here, Syeda. We just pray for everybody on the ground, for everybody's safety.
Absolutely.
And if you're protesting out there, stay safe and also do it peacefully. And as Governor Walz did say, don't try to escalate those tensions.
Absolutely, and now that you summed that up so nicely, I mean, absolutely, we want everybody to stay safe out there. We want things to stay calm like we're seeing right now, looking at ICE agents in this video here.
Yep,
and it seems like it's not just the incident with the ICE shooting that happened a week and a half ago that people are upset about. People are speaking out about many different things. We just saw a gentleman with the Free Palestine flag as well. So it seems like it's numerous topics that people are getting together for right there. And we are currently seeing a peaceful display there, and hopefully it stays this way. But again, we are also seeing people pointing at those ICE agents, maybe screaming something at them, and just everybody just hopes and prays that people exercise their right to protest, but keeping things calm. We don't want protesters to get hurt, and we don't want the ICE agents to get hurt either. And again, this is a situation we're going to continue to monitor here on Primetime Live Zone on Fox Local as well. And then tomorrow, more protests are expected across the country, and not just protests against ICE agents. There's another protest for ICE agents, in support of ICE agents, that's supposed to be held tomorrow in Minnesota as well. So we're going to show you both sides of the coin. There are people who are showing up to show their support and their love to ICE agents because people feel differently about things.
What's interesting about this situation, and we've been seeing the polling in the last couple of days, the polling for ICE is not strong at all. It's about 50% of Americans actually believe that ICE, as is currently constructed, is not keeping communities safer. And you're also seeing 20% are saying unsure. So you could say 70% are either neutral or against this, with only 30% of Americans thinking ICE is doing the right thing and creating a safe environment. Another biggest thing, Syeda, that I saw from the polling data is 46% of Americans may want to abolish ICE now. If any politician had said that 2 years ago, that would be persona non grata for them. Now that this is happening and we're seeing all this stuff live in our feeds, social media, TV, streaming like us, there's a lot of people are seeing all this, and they're very upset across the country.
I think just this morning there was a Bangladeshi American woman who was pulled out of a car by an ICE agent, and people are having strong reactions.
Yeah.
Even if you want to sum that up to a certain idea for the left or the right. I mean, when we look at those images that come out of citizens who have green cards who are being impacted like this, people are going to feel strongly about it. And I think it's going to just change the way people feel safe when they head out the door. It's becoming, ever since President Donald Trump got reelected, I had never heard the term ICE before, and then now it's like I completely know what it is, and I don't. For some of it, I learned through the different incidents for different folks that were taken in, and obviously the big one, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, that was a huge one,
Right.
and that's still going on. So.
Yeah, and just to close out, I mean, there's reports coming out that ICE has shot at 11 people since September of 2024. So, sorry, 2025. I keep getting my years wrong. But that's just another concern. People don't want to see this happening in the streets. And we will see what the end of all this is, because the protests are not changing or going away.
Absolutely. Make sure you watch us tomorrow, Fox 5 Weekend Live on Fox Local. Have a great night. Take care. Great job, guys.
Hope I didn't go too long.